The July afternoon heat in Jackson, Mississippi was suffocating, thick and smoldering like a coal furnace, but inside room 4 of the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, PICU, at Batson Children's Hospital, Children's of Mississippi, the air was chilling. Not because of the air conditioning, but because of the lingering scent of smoke, the constant hiss of the ventilator, and the sight of a small, motionless body lying on the hospital bed. The boy's name was Edric Jamal, 8 years old, African-American, the latest patient transferred up from the ER. His entire body was wrapped in medicated white bandages, his skin scorched in twisted patterns of flame and ash. But what worried the nurses most wasn't the burns on his skin, it was his lungs, straining to draw breath through the endotracheal tube. Dr. Nathan Reed entered at 4:27 p.m. He had been on shift for over 12 hours, running on nothing but 2 cups of watered-down coffee. But the moment he saw the medical chart with the note, smoke inhalation, loss of family in fire, his expression shifted. "Does this child have any relatives left?" he asked quietly. A nurse shook her head, replying in a hushed voice. "Only his grandmother. She just arrived. She's sitting out in the hallway." Dr. Reed nodded, adjusted his gloves, and approached the bed. Under the bluish glow of the overhead light, Edric's face looked eerily calm, not flinching, not crying, just lying there with heartbreaking stillness. An 8-year-old boy who had just lost his parents and sister in a fire, now lying in silence. "Hey there, Edric." Dr. Reed leaned down, gently inspecting the burns on the boy's chest. "Your name's Edric, right? I'm Dr. Nathan. You're in the hospital now. You're safe." There was no reply. But Dr. Reed noticed the slightest flutter of Edric's eyelids, a faint response hovering between unconsciousness and awareness. He glanced at the ventilator readings and let out a quiet sigh. The boy's lungs were severely inflamed, and the carbon monoxide levels in his blood remained dangerously high. What puzzled him was how calm Edric seemed. Unlike most respiratory burn victims who typically writhe or panic, Edric appeared to be waiting for something, or had perhaps already given up. 2 hours later, Edric opened his eyes for the first time. Dr. Reed had been reviewing another patient's chart when he was urgently called back to room 4. When he entered, Edric was staring at the ceiling, his obsidian-dark eyes clouded over like polished stone covered in dust. "Is it hard for you to breathe?" the doctor asked gently. Edric didn't answer. He only shook his head faintly, then turned his gaze toward the small TV screen mounted in the corner of the room, which was playing a toy commercial. Dr. Reed followed his eyes and saw it. A Lego set. A small angel figure with white wings standing on golden ground. The doctor said nothing, but in the boy's eyes, he saw something unmistakable. Longing. "You like that one?" he asked, offering a soft smile. For the first time, Edric nodded. It was the faintest of nods, as if even the air might shatter from the weight of it. Dr. Reed made a quick note in his journal. "Eye response positive. Mental state not collapsed. Still has dreams. Don't let that go dark." Mrs. Gloria Jamal, Edric's only surviving relative, was a frail 75-year-old woman with ash-white hair and trembling hands clutching a worn-out purse. She didn't cry. She simply stood in silence, staring at her grandson through the ICU observation window, her lips pressed together so tightly they turned pale. "Does the boy know about his family?" she asked Dr. Reed, her voice hoarse and raspy. "He doesn't remember everything yet," Dr. Reed replied, his tone softening. "And I think we can hold off on that, at least for a few more days. His lungs are still fragile. Emotional shock could worsen things." Mrs. Gloria gave a faint nod, but her eyes were hollow, worn by a lifetime of hardship, now clinging to just one reason to keep going. Edric. In the days that followed, Dr. Reed often stopped by Edric's room, sometimes to adjust the ventilator, other times just to sit in silence, listening to the steady beep-beep of the monitors while his mind wandered through questions no one could answer. Why didn't the boy cry? Why didn't he scream or rage? Why was there such a chilling calm inside him, as if he'd lived far longer than his 8 years, in a world where no one had ever truly listened? One evening, after finishing a long surgery, Dr. Reed returned to his office, powered on his computer, and opened a toy store website. He typed in the search bar, Lego Angel White Wings. Within seconds, he found it. The exact set Edric had gazed at so intently. It was quite expensive, but he didn't hesitate. He ordered it immediately, entering the doctor's on-call room as the shipping address. In the message box, he wrote, "From a doctor to a fighter, for the child who still believes in light." A week later, the Lego box arrived. Dr. Reed personally brought it into Edric's room. The boy could sit up a little by then, still breathing through an oxygen mask, but his eyes were brighter. "This is a gift for you," the doctor said as he placed the box on the table beside the bed. "I thought it might be a small kind of miracle, like the one you've been hoping for." Edric hesitated, then slowly reached out. The moment his fingers touched the box, his eyes widened in disbelief. His gaze locked onto Dr. Reed's, silently asking, "Is this really for me?" Dr. Reed nodded. "It's for you, because you deserve it, and because I believe angels might truly begin with the smallest pieces." Edric didn't cry. He only bowed his head for a long time, and when he finally looked up, there was a smile, small and fragile like a thread. But it was his first smile since the fire. That night, in his small office, Dr. Reed sat in silence, staring at Edric's lung x-rays. The damage remained severe. Medicine could never promise anything, but one thing he knew for certain. If hope still existed, it lived inside those Lego bricks, each piece a heartbeat, each connection a moment Edric chose life over surrender. The last rays of daylight slanted through the dust-flecked window of the PICU, casting pale golden streaks across the small table beside the hospital bed. There, an 8-year-old boy sat hunched forward, his hands wrapped in white bandages, carefully piecing together Lego bricks. That boy was Edric Jamal, and beside him stood the box Dr. Reed had given him 3 days earlier, a white angel with wide wings, standing atop a shimmering golden base. Ever since receiving the gift, Edric began to change. He managed to eat a few spoonfuls of soup, no longer resisted when the nurses checked his vitals. Each morning, Grandma Gloria would comb her hair neatly, put on an old shirt freshly pressed, and sit by his bedside, quietly watching his small hands turn and click each Lego piece into place as if he were building a world of safety all his own. "You really like it, don't you?" she once asked. Edric nodded without replying, but his eyes, every time they gazed at the slowly forming figure, lit up with a glow soft as firelight in the dark. That evening, the hospital was unusually quiet. The sirens, footsteps, and even the occasional cries from other rooms all faded, as if someone had drawn a heavy curtain over the entire floor. Grandma Gloria sat on the wooden chair beside Edric's bed, her legs numb after a long day of waiting. Resting on her lap was a half-knitted scarf, sky blue, the color she called hope. She turned to say something when she noticed Edric looking at her. His eyes were different, not dull, not afraid, but calm, almost accepting. "Grandma," he said, voice so soft she had to lean in close to hear. "I think I understand why Mom, Dad, and my sister went first." Her heart jolted. Her fingers clenched the edge of the scarf. "I think maybe it's warmer there than here. Maybe it doesn't hurt there." "No, Edric." Her voice trembled as she cut in. "Don't say things like that. You still have me. You have to live." The boy tilted his head slightly, as if trying to soothe her. But the smile on his lips didn't belong to a child dreaming of tomorrow. It was the smile of someone who had seen far more than his years should allow and had chosen, with quiet grace, to begin saying goodbye. Edric whispered, "Grandma, I'm not scared. I'm just a little tired." Gloria burst into tears. The droplets slid down her wrinkled cheeks, falling onto the boy's hands, soaking into the edge of the bedsheet. No, you can't. You have to fight, Edric. You're all I have left." But the boy had already closed his eyes, gently, as if he'd finished saying what needed to be said. In her chest, a chill pierced through like a blade. The fear that had hovered at the edge of her mind now took shape, heavy, real, pounding against her ribs. Without hesitation, she sprang to her feet, rushing out into the hallway, her voice cracking as she cried, Dr. Reed!" Dr. Nathan Reed was in the medicine room when the emergency call from PICU Room 4 came through. He sprinted down the hallway, the words of the night nurse echoing in his head. "Patient Edric, his grandmother says something's wrong." When he entered the room, Edric lay still, but his face looked peaceful. The ventilator was still running, his pulse slower, but steady. Reed checked the oxygen saturation, still stable. It wasn't a physiological crash. It was something else. A different sign. A kind of letting go. He leaned over the bed and called gently, "Edric, it's Dr. Reed. Can you hear me?" The boy's eyelids fluttered. "You're here," Edric murmured, eyes half opening. I just dreamed about Elsa. She said it's really bright where she is, but I think I told her I can't go yet. There's still one thing I need to do." From beneath his pillow, he pulled out the completed Lego figure, a white angel, standing tall with its wings spread wide as if protecting an entire tiny world. He lifted it with both hands, offering it to the doctor. "For you," he said, his voice faint but steady. "Thank you for the long hours you spend on me. Treat others the way you treated me. You are a great doctor, and my angel." Dr. Reed froze. Though still a young physician, Dr. Reed, who had once held the hands of many pediatric patients in their final moments, felt a tightness grip his chest. He couldn't speak. He simply nodded and reached out with both hands to receive the Lego angel, as if cradling a pure soul, as if accepting a sacred responsibility the boy had entrusted him with. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice husky like melting stone. "You are my angel too." That night, Dr. Reed didn't return to the on-call room. He stayed at his desk, the angel figure placed in the center. Under the warm yellow light, the small Lego pieces, humble on their own, came together to form something sacred, a pair of wings spread wide, as if lifting his entire heart. The next day, when the nurse came to take his vitals, Edric was noticeably weaker, yet he still smiled and whispered, "I want to see Grandma." Gloria was allowed in. She held her grandson's hand tightly. "I'll stay right here," she said, voice trembling, "until you get better." Edric smiled faintly but said nothing. He only looked up at the ceiling, where light filtered through the curtain, drawing soft streaks that looked like angel wings. 3 days after the evening Edric gave away his Lego angel, no one said it out loud, but everyone, from the nurses to the doctors to Grandma Gloria, knew something was drawing near. The boy grew quieter, but his eyes gleamed with an uncanny brightness, as if gazing upon a world only he could see. And Dr. Nathan Reed continued checking Edric's vitals day and night. In his seasoned eyes, those of a PICU veteran, numbers never lied. Oxygen saturation slowly declined, fluid began collecting in the lungs, respiratory pressure dropped to a concerning low. Every indicator pointed to what medicine refers to as the calm window, a deceptive phase where burn patients seem to recover. But in truth, the body is nearing collapse. It is the flame flaring once more before it flickers out. That night, rain came to Jackson. Soft drops tapped gently against the hospital window, quiet, like the sky's farewell. The lights in Edric's room were dimmed, leaving only a warm amber glow on the bedside table. Edric lay on his side, facing the window. His eyes were half closed, his breathing uneven. Gloria sat close, one hand holding his, the other clutching the nearly finished blue knitted scarf. She whispered, "My sweet boy. Grandma's still here." He didn't respond, but his little fingers curled ever so slightly, a tender answer to her gentle grip. She reached out and lightly touched his forehead, just as the heart monitor began to slow. Not abruptly, not erratically, but gradually, like the final notes of a piano falling into silence. Dr. Reed was paged urgently. He arrived in under a minute. He didn't perform CPR, didn't administer emergency drugs, didn't call for another doctor. He simply stepped to the bedside, knelt down on one knee, and placed his hand over Edric's. A warm hand, on a heart gently slipping away from this world. And he knew this wasn't a moment to prolong with machines. It was a moment to honor with the heart. Edric opened his eyes just slightly, so faintly, like one last glance. "Doctor," the boy whispered, so faintly it was barely audible. Dr. Reed leaned closer. "I'm here," he replied. Edric smiled, a small smile, but it held the whole sky within it. The Lego. Don't let it be sad. Okay? The doctor's heart clenched. He nodded, his eyes welling up. 1 second, 2 seconds. The monitor shifted to a flat, quiet line. Gloria broke into tears, but it wasn't a wail of anger or blame, just the cracking of a soul who had now lost her entire family again. As for Dr. Reed, he stood up, gently pulled the blanket up to the boy's chest, and said nothing, not goodbye, because Edric hadn't truly left. He had simply moved somewhere else. Somewhere without needles, without burns, without the beeping machines counting down time. A place filled with light, colorful building blocks and love that never fades. The doctor stepped outside. It was still raining, but the rain no longer felt cold. It felt like it was helping to wipe away the tears of a grieving grandmother, a silent nurse, and a doctor whose heart, long hardened by years of loss, now cracked open and began to bloom. The next day, room 4 was empty. All that remained was the Lego angel, which Dr. Reed had brought back and placed on his desk. Every day, he dusted its white wings, and sometimes he even spoke to it like an old friend. You didn't live long, but you lived enough to teach me something, that healing isn't just about saving a life, it's about keeping a soul whole, right to the very end. Edric had folded his wings peacefully. Years passed. Dr. Nathan Reed's office sat on the 6th floor of the University of Mississippi School of Medicine. It wasn't particularly spacious or modern, but it was always tidy, just like the man himself. On the shelves were hundreds of medical texts, research files, anatomical models. But at the very center of his desk, placed on a small wooden pedestal, stood a Lego statue, a white angel. Its color faded to ivory with time, yet every detail remained perfectly intact. It was the final gift from Edric Jamal, the 8-year-old boy who had lost his entire family in a fire and who had quietly entrusted the statue to Dr. Reed before passing away on a rainy night nearly 10 years ago. Each time the late afternoon sun slanted through the window and fell upon that statue, Dr. Reed felt as though it were alive, as if those white wings still held the warmth of a small soul who had left too soon but left behind a mark that would never fade from the heart of the doctor. Dr. Reed was now 39. He had become one of the leading pediatricians in Mississippi, specializing in intensive care and trauma recovery. He had spoken at dozens of national conferences and taught hundreds of young doctors. Yet in every class, without exception, he always told the story of Edric, not as a clinical case, but as a lesson of the heart. Today marked the opening session of the first residency course of the new year. The classroom was filled with youthful faces and eyes burning with passion. Dr. Reed entered right on time, in a crisp white shirt, his voice calm and steady, his gaze composed. He began. Good morning, everyone. I won't be talking about respiratory anatomy or the classification of third-degree burns today. You'll learn all of that in time. What I want you to hear now is a story. The room fell silent. Every ear tuned in. Nearly 10 years ago, I met a very special patient. An 8-year-old boy, severely burned in a house fire. His parents and sister didn't survive. Only his grandmother remained, a frail woman living on social welfare. When he arrived at the hospital, his burns were both external and internal, severe pulmonary injury, with a high risk of death. But what haunted me was not the burns. It was his eyes. Doctor, Reed paused, allowing the images to resurface in his mind. They weren't the eyes of someone begging for help or crying or panicked, like most of the children I had treated. They were calm, too calm, the gaze of someone who had lost too much. His name was Edric. I gave him a Lego set, something he had once seen in a TV ad. 3 days later, he gave me back a Lego angel, built with his own hands in the final hours of his life. He said, "You are a great doctor, and my angel." That was the last time I heard his voice. Dr. Reed turned to his desk and gently placed the angel statue in front of the class. The room was utterly still. No one scribbled notes. No one looked at their phones. Only quiet listening. He continued, "This angel has no face, only wings. But to me, it carries countless expressions. I see Edric in it, and all the children I've ever cared for and said goodbye to. I keep it here, at the center of my desk, like a silent guardian. It protects me from growing numb, from the things modern medicine too often succumbs to: doubt, fatigue, and emotional detachment. He paused. You'll soon realize this profession doesn't offer many victories. There will be times when you do everything right and still lose a patient. There will be days when you're so exhausted you can't bear to hear one more cry, and nights when you ask yourself whether any of it means anything at all. When those moments come, remember this: patients don't just need you to treat their illness. They need you to be present, to listen, to hold their hand not like a technician, but like family. A young woman in the front row raised her hand, eyes glistening. Sir, after Edric passed, how did you deal with the grief? Dr. Reed fell silent. Then he gave a quiet smile. I didn't overcome it. I learned to carry it. Today, I tell his story again. I don't know where he is now, on a cloud, in the wind, or maybe simply inside a small plastic statue, but he's still here, within my heart. And from that heart, I've passed on the light to others. That's how I heal. He turned to the Lego angel. Every morning, I touch it before starting my shift. Every night, I touch it before leaving the office. Not to remember a death, but to remember a life. A small soul who once taught me something profound, that medicine, without compassion, is nothing more than a lifeless science. It teaches me that while I may not always have the power to cure, I will always have the ability to bring comfort and healing.